Their doctrines have been summarized as follows. There is one God, unknown and unknowable, without personal form, and of whom we can only predicate an existence. 9 times he has appeared on earth in the form of man. These were not incarnations, for God did not assume flesh, but merely put on flesh as a man puts on a garment. There are 5 invisible intelligences called ministers of religion, and who have been impersonated by 5 Druze teachers, of whom the first is universal intelligence, personated by Hamsa, whose creation was the immediate work of God. The second is the universal soul, personated by Ismail, and is the female principle as to the first, as the universal intelligence is the male. From these 2 proceed the Word, which is personated by Mohammed Wahhab. The fourth is the right wing, or the proceeding, produced from the Word and the universal soul, and personated by Selema. The fifth is the left wing, or the following, produced in the same way from the proceeding and personated by Moqtana Bahadin. These form the religious hierarchy of Drusidism, as the 10 Sephiroth make the mystical tree of the Kabbalists, from which it is probable that the Druses borrowed the idea. But they are taken, as Dr. Jessup says, in some mysterious and incomprehensible sense which no Druze man or woman ever understood or can understand. Footnote. Syrian Home Life, page 183. Yet their sacred books assert that none can possess the knowledge of Drusidism except he knows all these ministers of religion. They have also 7 precepts or commandments, obedience to which is enjoined but very seldom observed by the modern Druses, and never in their intercourse with unbelievers. 1. To speak the truth. 2. To render each other mutual assistance. 3. To renounce all error. 4. To separate from the ignorant and wicked. 5. To always assert the eternal unity of God. 6. To be submissive under trials and sufferings. 7. To be content in any condition, whether of joy or sorrow. Of their outward forms and ceremonies we have no reliable information, for their worship is a secret one. In their sacred edifices, which are embowered among high trees, or placed on the mountain summit, there are no ornaments. They have no prescribed rites, and do not offer prayer, but in their worship sing hymns and read the sacred books. Churchill gives evidence of the profound secrecy in which the Druses envelop their religion. 2 objects, he says, engrossed my attention: the religion of the Druses and the past history of the races which now occupy the mountain range of Lebanon. In vain I tried to make the terms of extreme friendship and intimacy which existed between myself and the Drusses available for the purpose of informing myself on the first of these points. Sheiks, Akals, and peasants alike baffled my inquiries, either by jocose evasion or by direct negation. Footnote. On the Drusses and Maronites under Turkish rule. Finally, as if to complete their resemblance to a secret society, we are told that to enable one Drus to recognize another, a system of signs and passwords is adopted, without an interchange of which no communication in respect to their mysteries is imparted. The Reverend Mr. King, in his work on the Gnostics, thinks that the Drusses of Mount Lebanon, though claiming for their founder the Egyptian Caliph Hakim, are in all probability the remains of the numerous Gnostic sects noticed by Procopius as flourishing there most extensively in his own times. Footnote. King's Gnostics, page 183, which was in the 6th century. And he adds that the popular belief among their neighbors is that they, the Drusses, adore an idol in the form of a calf, and hold in their secret meetings orgies similar to those laid to the charge of the Ophites in Roman times, of the Templars in medieval, and of the continental Freemasons in modern times. Footnote. King's Gnostics, page 183. This statement I have found confirmed by other writers, but Mr. King thinks it an interesting and significant point that the Drusses hold the residence of their supreme head to be in Scotland, a tradition which, he says, has been evidently handed down from the times when the Templars were all powerful in their neighborhood. This would prove, admitting the statement to be true, rather that the Drusses borrowed from the Templars than that the Templars borrowed from the Drusses, though it would even then be very difficult to understand why the Templars should have traced their head to Scotland, since the legend of Scottish Templarism is of more recent growth. We may, however, judge of the weight to be attached to Mr. King's arguments from the fact that he deems it to be a singular coincidence that our Freemasons are often spoken of by German writers as the Scottish Brethren. Not being a Mason, he was ignorant of the meaning of the term, which refers to a particular rite of Masonry, and not to any theory of its origin, and is therefore no coincidence at all. The hypothesis of the supposed connection of the sect of Gnostics with Freemasonry will be the subject of future consideration. But there was another secret society of greater importance than the Drusses, which flourished with vigor in Syria at the time of the Crusaders, and whose connection with the Templars, as historically proved, may have had some influence over that order in molding, or at least in suggesting, some of its esoteric dogmas and ceremonies. This was the sect of the Assassins. The Ismaili, or as they are more commonly called, the Assassins, from their supposed use of the herb hashish to produce a temporary frenzy, was during the Crusades one of the most powerful tribes of Syria, although their population is now little more than 1,000. The sect was founded about the end of the 11th century in Persia by Hassan Sahab from Persia, where they are supposed to have imbibed many of the doctrines of the philosophical sect of the Sophies. They emigrated to Asia Minor and settled in Syria to the south of Mount Lebanon. Their chief was called Sikh Hel Jebber, literally translated the Old Man of the Mountain, a name familiar to the readers of the Voyages of Sinbad. Higgins, who when he had a theory to sustain, became insane upon the subject of etymology, translates it as the sage of the Kabbalah or traditions, but the plain Arabic words admit of no such interpretation. The credulity and the ignorance of the Middle Ages has assigned to the sect of the Assassins the character of habitual murderers, an historical error that has been perpetuated in our language by the meaning given to the word assassin. This calumny has been exploded by the researches of modern scholars who now class them as a philosophical sect whose doctrines and instructions were secret. Of the Sophies, from whom the Ismaili or assassins derived their doctrine, it will be necessary soon to speak. Von Hammer, who wrote a history of the assassins, footnote, Die Geschichte der Assassinen aus Morgenland Hischen, Quellen, Tübingen, 1818, has sought to trace a close connection between them and the Templars. He has shown himself rather as a prejudiced opponent than as an impartial critic, but the sophistry of his conclusions does not affect the accuracy of his historical statements. Subsequent writers have, therefore, in their accounts of this sect, borrowed largely from the pages of von Hammer. The Assassins were a secret society, having a religion and religious instructions which they imparted only to those of their tribe who had gone through a prescribed form of initiation. According to von Hammer, that system of initiation was divided into 3 degrees. They administered oaths of secrecy and of passive obedience, and had modes of mutual recognition, thus resembling in many respects other secret societies which have at all times existed. He says that they were governed by a Grand Master and had regulations and a religious code, in all of which he supposes that he has found a close resemblance to the Templars. Their religious views, he states, to have been as follows.